Well, welcome to everybody. We are about to start. This is lecture number 15 on the Kuzari, and we are in the Ma'amar Hasheni, which is the second essay. Um, and we started paragraph 14. And during our discussion, we were talking, Jeffrey and I were talking right before we went on the air right now, and he mentioned that the last few paragraphs, and I mean, it's kind of, I shudder to say this a little bit, but it gets a little, it's less exciting, okay, than some of the other things we've studied together. But I have made it a point, when I started doing these lectures years ago, I started thinking, oh, I'll skip around, I'll do the interesting parts, until I realized that skipping around and doing interesting parts doesn't do justice to the book. And you never know, even in the parts that you might not think are the most interesting, you never know what kind of very interesting points and ideas you're going to find. So we'll go through this, of course, obviously, and as we always do. I'm in 14, and I'm going to start from the beginning. But just to remind you, we began in the last few paragraphs the discussion of the significance of Eretz Yisrael, of the land of Israel, and the Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is a strong advocate for the idea. Now, remember this idea. Others such as Rambam have a very different understanding of the special holiness of the land of Israel. Hold on 1 minute. Let me mute everyone. Okay, there we go. And feel free, if you want to cut in, just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. But there's always a question when you talk about the holiness of anything, whether it's a place or a person or an item, right? What holiness is? Is there something intrinsically holy about something? Is like, if you had, I joke with my kids sometimes, if you had a holometer, right? All right, how high would the needle go, right? Versus, is holiness something that we give to a place, based on how we act towards it, what we do with it, and how we use a certain item, and the holiness has meaning to us because of what we attribute to that place. Now, the when you understand the special holiness of the land of Israel, that this really comes into play. And we have to understand that the Kuzari is a very strong advocate for the idea that there's an intrinsic special holiness to the land of Israel. It's not just holy because of all the things that we did there, because of the experiences of the Jewish people there, because of the history that was there, because of, all of the things that happened there, et cetera, but it's holy because there's something intrinsically special and different about the land. So I'm not here to take sides in that debate. I'm just here to point out that debate so that you understand where Rabbi Yehuda Halevi is coming from. And the source of this idea really comes from these paragraphs that we started studying last week, and we're going to continue, of course, tonight, and we're going to continue, of course, in the probably the next lecture, maybe even another one after that, till we complete his discussion of this topic. Another thing about Rabbi Yehuda Halevi that we're going to learn, and I know this is again a little bit of a spoiler, but I'm going to do it anyway, and that is the idea, and this is why I have advocated in these lectures, and I have always said this, that the true father of Zionism, of the idea that Jews should be going back and living in and residing in and the land of Israel today, right, is really Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. Obviously, he's not the first person to talk about the specialness of the land of Israel. That's not what I mean. But the idea that you and I today should get up and go and move to Israel and live there and settle there is very much an idea that Rabbi Yehuda Halevi put on the map in our religion. And we're going to see that as we see him develop this. So in other words, we're not supposed to sit and wait for Mashiach to come, and we're not supposed to sit and wait for some sign from heaven that it's time to go, but you're supposed to pack your bags and go, right? Literally, actually, in this real world, because it's an actual holy place. So it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I want you to understand that even though some of what he says, might not sound so great to our modern ears, some of it might sound beautiful, some of it whatever, but nonetheless, we extract from these words a very, very important concept that has become a very basic part of being Jewish to this day. And Rabbi Yehuda Levi was very much responsible for that. So Omar HaChaver, I'm starting from, so when I read in Hebrew, again, I'm reading from Michael Schwartz. It's probably the most, in modern Hebrew, the most, and it's directly translated from the Arabic. I know I'm going to also refer to pages in Rabbi Korobkin's English version, this one, which I think most of you have, and I'm on page 156. I might be repeating some stuff that we did last week, but the Kuzari, the king of the Chazars, has just challenged Rabbi Yehuda Levi, who said that the prophecy is tied to the land of Israel. Prophecy only happens in the land of Israel. That's one of the unique characteristics of the holiness of the land of Israel. So the Kuzari, the king of the Chazars, challenged him and said, "What are you talking about? There's a whole bunch of people who prophesied outside the land of Israel. Avraham Avinu himself, the first major prophecy recorded in the Torah to Avraham Avinu was Lach Lecha, go to the land of Israel. So clearly he wasn't in the land of Israel when that happened. And Yechezkel, whose entire career, Yechezkel ben Buzi, right, who wrote the entire book of Ezekiel, right, all of his prophecies occurred outside the land of Israel, and when he was in Galus and in exile in Babylon. And Daniel, of course, it's debatable in Chazal whether he's officially considered a prophet or not, but assuming that he is, then his prophecies all occurred in the land of Babylon. And of course, and then Jeremiah, who is most famous for his prophecies in the land of Israel. For those that studied Jeremiah, and if you haven't, I recommend once again my own podcast to go listen to my lectures on Yirmiyahu. But regardless, Yirmiyahu, near the end of his career, unfortunately, was exiled to Egypt, during the process of the very, very unfortunate destruction of the first temple and Jewish sovereignty in Yerushalayim. And there are several chapters, I think it's from 42, 43, somewhere around there in Yirmiyahu, you can look it up, where a lot of his prophecies occurred in Egypt. And they specifically, so what's going on? So he challenged him. So what's his answer? So what's the Rabbi Yehuda Levi's answer? So Amar HaChaver. So the Chaver, the rabbi or the Jewish scholar, answered him as follows: Kol mi shenisnabe, anyone that says, and again, right now I'm on page 156 in the Korobkin. You can follow in the English there or in the Hebrew, which is the Ibn Tibbon Hebrew, and I'm reading in Michael Schwartz's Hebrew. So our Kol mi shenisnabe rak ba olamana. All prophecies are either in Israel or about Israel. That's just the way it is. I want to point out that one can very much, you can debate this point. I'm just going to put that out there. Most of the prophets do prophesize often about other nations that don't seem to have anything to do with Israel. Just open the book of Yeshayahu, where he directs many of his prophecies to other nations. But regardless, this is the point that Rabbi Yehuda Levi is making. Avraham nisnabe kadei sheyavar eleha. You mentioned Abraham; he was told to go to Israel, which is a fair point. Yechezkel v'Daniel leman, the entire purpose of Yechezkel, Ezekiel's prophecies, and Daniel's prophecies. Their purpose was in order to was regarding Israel, regarding the well-being of Israel, regarding the restoration of Israel, regarding the return to Israel. It's all about that, which is certainly a fair point. Both Yechezkel and Daniel were prior to them prophesying outside of Israel, were once in Israel. Yechezkel, for sure, we know he was a Kohen, right? This is recorded in the book of Yechezkel. And he was exiled with the first exile to Babylon, and then so he clearly began his career as a Kohen in Israel. Daniel, not so much, but Daniel was a young boy, as recorded in the book of Daniel. So he also started his career in Israel. Whether he was actually a prophet there, you can debate. But the bottom line is he also started there. So they received their gift of prophecy in the Bayis Rishon, in the first temple, Eitzel HaShechina, when they were with the presence of the divine presence, the Shechina. That it's only there in the presence of the divine presence and in the place where the divine presence is, which is in Israel, especially during the time of the temple, right? That then the prophecy could then attach to such a person, right? So even maybe sometimes they might have physically been outside, but it's still coming through Israel in a sense. Asher Adam Arishon, Eretz Yisrael Ha'itza Admaso, because Adam Arishon, the first human being, his original land was the land of Israel, Ubames, that's where he died. And how do I know that? Because it's not clear from the Torah. In fact, the Torah, you might gather, Gan Eden, where he started, doesn't seem to be in the land of Israel. But no, you see, he died there because we know that in the cave, the 4 pairs of people were buried there. So clearly that was the place where Adam lived. Those 4 pairs being, of course, Adam and Chava, Avraham and Sarah, Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. So here we have the everyone being attached. Adam Arishon also was a prophet. We see in Bereshit that Adam communicated, or God communicated with Adam. So clearly that was also in Israel. Whenever the Torah says before God, it's always regarding the land of Israel. It's always there. It says in Devarim that God's eyes are always paying attention to the land of Israel. It was regarding this that the Hevel Cain Zebazah Rishona, the whole episode of Cain and Hevel, Cain and Abel, happened there. That's where they got jealous and got angry at each other and fought about. It was all about God paying attention to them in the land of Israel. Remember, this is Rabbi Yehuda Levi's opinion that he's expressing here in Kuzari, which it has its backing in Chazal. We can go into it in depth, but there's but others might quibble with that. But that's what the statement that he's making here. What was their argument about? And remember, Rabbi Yehuda Levi laid down for us this idea that this special relationship is something that was passed down from father to son until it reached the people of Israel. So Cain and Hevel, he's defining the fight between Cain and Hevel as a fight regarding who is going to receive that special quality that Adam had, who's going to get it. Now, we both know in the end it was Shes, which we'll see in a minute, Seth, but Skula Sovagari, who's going to be the seed that gets planted into the next generation, which grows a seed which gets planted in the next. And what the person who gets that seed is the one who is going to eventually inherit the land of Israel. I wanted to point out, this is something that we need to remember. The time when Rabbi Yehuda Levi wrote this was, I don't know, you can look this up, I might be wrong, but one of the Crusades were going on at this time. I don't remember exactly what the thing, but this was a time when the entire world was convulsed, literally, with fighting over the land of Israel. So for Rabbi Yehuda Levi to have this book where he's getting up and stating, but we're the ones that really own the place, right? After literally 1,000 years of the Romans and then the Byzantines and then the Arab conquest and then the Crusader conquest and then the Arab conquest from the Crusaders and the Crusaders back from the Arabs and back and forth. All this is going on. Like, this is the world war that's going on today, fighting over the land of Israel. And Rabbi Yehuda, you have to realize the historical context of what he's stating. This is a very bold claim. He's saying everybody, the whole world is literally slaughtering each other, killing each other, all over this land. But we're the ones that really belong there, and it's ours. He's making a very bold claim. And it's a bold claim, which nowadays, when we get up and make the same claim, we still have world wars about it and so on and so forth. So, I mean, yeah, the players change, the details change, but that's still the same idea. So Rabbi Yehuda Levi is standing up at this time in history and making this bold statement. So anyway, Vasheni Kiklipos, and the other guy, in other words, in the Cain and Hevel fight, would be just the shell, just the outer, wouldn't be the real seed. We all know what happened. Hevel ended up getting killed. And for a while, there was nobody around who was going to inherit it. And Cain was kicked out from before God, which Rabbi Yehuda Levi is inferring means he was kicked out of the land of Israel. He's wandering all around the planet. He's learning this verse, that Rabbi Yehuda Levi is learning this verse, from your face I am being hidden, meaning I am being banished from the land where your face is obvious, where your face is recognizable, and you're throwing me me al pnei ha'adama, which he's saying milifnei, right, is a language which Rabbi Levi is telling us is referring to the land of Israel. And it also says, we see that. How do I know this is true? Because we see by Jonah, it says Jonah got up to run to Tarshish milifnei Hashem, from before God. So when you're thrown out from before God, Jonah, what was he doing? He was leaving Israel. He was getting on a boat to leave Israel. So we see that when you leave Israel, that's called leaving the Pnei Hashem, the place where the face of God, so to speak, is apparent. Mimakom hanavua barach. He was running from the place where prophecy exists, and prophecy exists there because that's where the divine presence resides. So why did God quickly snatch him up with a whale and spit him out on the shores of Israel? Because he needed to get him back so he can talk to him, because that's where prophecy takes place. And then Kasher Nolad Sheis Domel Adam, when Sheis was born, Sheis was similar to the Adam, as the verse says, Vayoled bidmuso kitsalmo, that he gave birth to someone who was like him in form and in shape, right? So Rabbi Levi is understanding this to mean Sheis now was born like Adam and received that special character, that special characteristics, right? And this was in the place, right, where Hevel was, right? This, he's here now to take the place of Hevel. So therefore he would be considered a Ben Elokim, a son of God, just like Adam was. There's a lot here in understanding the way Rabbi Yehuda understands the whole idea of Bereshis. The term Ben Elokim, the son of God, he understands to mean the humans who have inherited this special characteristic of living in the land of Israel, and thus being able and also, having that special quality, that special relationship. Now here it comes in like, so what about nowadays, right? Everyone's arguing with each other. And remember, Esav and Yishmael, Esav being Yaakov's brother, Yishmael being Yitzchak's brother, are in the mind of the medieval Jewish thinker. Esav is Edom, Esav is Rome, and Esav is Western civilization, right? And Christendom, right? Yishmael is, in the mind of a medieval Jewish thinker, Yishmael is the Islamic world, right? That comes from the Arabs, which come from Yishmael. Whether that's genealogically correct isn't relevant, but the point is, in the mind of the medieval thinker, when you talk about Esav and Yishmael, they're thinking about the Islamic world versus the Christian world. So when he's saying this, you have to remember what he's talking about, right? The eyes of Isaac and Ishmael, they were very stingy with each other. They were angry with each other. Neither one wanted the other one to get it. Until it. I'm sorry. So there was the fight between Yitzchak and Yishmael. I didn't get to Esav yet. I jumped ahead of myself. Right? Yishmael was pushed away. He was just the shell. He wasn't going to get it. Right? So maybe right today the Ishmaelites might be fighting in Jerusalem over against the Christians, but Ishmael was pushed away. It's not his, it's ours. It's true that God blessed Ishmael and made him great and everything, and a lot of people. That is only in this world. So all the success you see of the Islamic kingdoms around the world, Rabbi Yehuda Levi is not mincing words here. He knows when people are reading this in his time, they know exactly what he's talking about. You might see that they're big and they have all their kingdoms and they're conquered all of this area and everything, right? But that's just all this world stuff. It's not the real deal. The real deal is the land of Israel. That's ours, our special relationship, right? You might not see it big on the world screen, but that's the way it is. Right? But the Torah says, my bris, my covenant is with Yitzchak, is with Isaac. That means that this special quality, this special spiritual characteristic belongs to Yitzchak and belongs to Isaac. Yishmael ein bris. There's no covenant with Yishmael, velo Esav, and there's no covenant with Esav, right? Which, remember, in his mind, he's referring to Christendom. Afal pisha hayu miusharim, even though they're also wealthy, even though they also have so much going on, they have all these kingdoms and they own all these things. No, it's not theirs. And this is what Yaakov and Esav were arguing with each other about, right? That despite the strength, the physical strength of Esav, and despite the physical weakness of Yaakov, remember, you have to think of the situation he's talking about. Even though Yaakov was a weak nobody being kicked around, right, like we see in my day, and Rabbi Levi is saying, right, we are still the ones that get the land of Israel. What about Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah? If you look there, all his prophecies in Egypt were either in Israel, they were actually in Israel, even though it says they were in Egypt, and we'll explain that in a minute, or they were regarding Israel. Now, you can quibble with this, and some of the commentaries do, because some of Yirmiyahu's prophecies in Egypt were directed directly at Egypt, right? And you can look them up, and you can decide whether you agree with Rabbi Levi or not. I'm just making this side point that it's not 100%, but this is what Rabbi Levi is claiming, right? That the Yirmiyahu's, because it's part of, but I guess in some tangential way you can say it, because he does prophecy there, for example, about an upcoming battle between Babylon and Egypt, which really is not about Israel, but whatever. Okay, fine. But v'chein nevuas Moshe v'Aaron u'Miriam, the same thing, the prophecies of Moshe and Aaron, which we know took place in the desert, that wasn't Israel. Asher l'Sinai uparan kulam b'gulay. So no, the desert, all the desert of Sinai, was all falls within the final ultimate boundaries of Israel. Kihen me'eber li'amsuf, because they are on that particular side of the Yamsuf, of the Red Sea. Right, and I'll place your boundaries from the Sea of the Philistines, from the Red Sea, all the way to the river. And what's the river? The river is the Euphrates, and the Midbar, the desert, is the desert of Paran, which is the great desert, and that's the boundary on the south. Fine. So it all happened. That whole desert was all part of Israel. Remember, the point here is really, I mean, we can sit and argue whether it really is true or not. This is what Rabbi Levi is saying, and that's his opinion, and his point is that Israel is where prophecy takes place. And it's within Israel that the mizbachot, that the altars, that the forefathers who were answered from flames coming from heaven, and with the special light of God, Akedat Yitzchak, and the incredible occasion of the Akedah, of the binding of Yitzchak, Hoysa al Har Shamim, it was on some desolate mountain, right? V'hu Har HaMoriah, which turned out in the end, we found out this is a special place. It wasn't just some random mountain. It is the Mount Moriah. Achrei Kain, afterwards, we made David in the days of David, right? Oso Har HaYamayushav, when by then that wasn't just a random mountain, it was a mountain that was settled. Aravna Hayavusi, and the Jebusite Aravna was there. Hayaovid es Admaso, he was working his land, Bechorishbo, and plowing it. Nigla, so that's when the special secret became revealed, right? Shezeh Makom HaMiyuchad HaMuchad Nashchina, that this is the special place. That we didn't find out until King David's time. But all those events had occurred on that same mountain when it seemed like just a random mountaintop. That's why Avram Avinu called it that. That was at the time of the Akedat Yitzchak. It says clearly that the Beit HaMikdash was built Bahar HaMoriah. We see it clearly in the book of Chronicles that it's identified that the place, the Har HaMoriah, is the place where the Akedah happened. Sham bi'achrech hamakomos This is clearly the place that was worthy of being called the gates of heaven are there. Right? You can see how right? He didn't talk about his special dream or his special religion or anything special, but rather when he spoke about it, he deliberately emphasized the connection to that special place. What did Yaakov? Yaakov had this incredible dream, right? And what was his exclamation? How wonderful this place is. So he was clearly recognized. The thing that stood out to him was something special about this place. And the whole story started. It says Yaakov reached that place, right? Yaakov could have said, wow, what an amazing vision, or what an amazing idea that the angels are going up and down. You can learn all kinds of lessons, and there must have been 700 million wonderful sermons given on that story, right? And I'm sure we've all been inspired by it at various times in our life. But what was Yaakov inspired by? The place where it happened, right? Because it was a special place. Halotira. I thought a couple hands popped up here and there, but I'm kind of driving towards at least the end of this paragraph, just the 14 before I stop for comments. But if you really want to cut in, then just unmute yourself and do so. Halotira Ketzar Avraham, and you see Avraham Kevan Shesigseg Udvekuso Badavar Laki Nasa Mechuyeves, right? Because I don't know a good translation for sigsag. Let me see what he uses. I'm sorry. We are right now. He was kind of shaken or moved away from his place, and his attachment to this special spiritual quality, right, became it became an inherent part of who he was, because he was the seed of this special quality, that he had to then move to a place where his completion can be completed. I'm sorry if that's redundant. But Zos Kemosha Ha'ikar Motse Ba'adama Midbaris Shoresh Shel Eitz Shapirioto. In a similar way, a farmer might find in the ground somewhere out in the wilderness, he might find the root of a tree. A farmer wants to grow a certain plant. So nowadays you can go to your favorite seed store and buy tomato seeds. But then, if you're a farmer and you want to start an orchard and grow whatever, I don't know, pick your fruit, you need to go out and find fruits. You need to find a place where it grows. And then when you get it, right, you need to a tree. You find the tree that has good fruit, and then you bring it to the land which you worked, which you prepared, so that it can thrive and grow well, and you can get a lot of fruit. Right? Who you got also sham, and then he'll grow it there. So this tree, which once was just a wild tree that gave off fruit, but it wasn't so productive, now it's a big, beautiful tree that's growing lots of fruit, because now it's in the special place, in the right place. And now it's going to be a big, tall tree. While it wasn't growing in the wild, it was a little scraggly tree, right? And then also it was in some random field in the middle of nowhere. So you might bump into it, you might not. If you get lucky, you might get a fruit or two. But now you know exactly where it is. It's in your backyard, and you can always harvest a lot of fruit, whenever it gives its fruit. So Cain, Rabu, Hanavim, the same thing. That's why there were so many prophets, Mikarev Tzatzov, from among his descendants, Abraham, Avram's descendants, Kolzman, Tanishu, Beretz Yisraelim, Hanasibos, Hamasayos, right? As long as they remained within that land, right? And he's attaching the cessation of prophecy to our exile from that land, right? And when we were there were lots and lots of prophets there. When they at the time when there was other things that we were doing in that land that helped enhance the environment within which we can grow. So just like a farmer he'll take away all the weeds, and he'll fertilize the ground, and he'll water the tree, and he'll prune the tree, and he'll do all the things that are necessary to make this tree work in this place. So in Israel, the same thing. When all the konotaros, the ideas of Torah, of purity, avodos Hashem, and all the special avodos, the things we do to worship God, and the sacrifices, kol shekain b'nochachos hashchina, how much more so will they all work when we're there at the place which is the presence of the Shechina? Ki hadavar eloki, this special godly quality, who it's waiting for somebody to come and attach himself to that special quality, such as the Nevi'im and the Chosim, the prophets and the seers. And then God will then, if you come to this place and you act the right way, you live the right way, God's there waiting for you, and He will be your God, and He will have that special relationship with you. Like a person has a brain, he has intelligence, but first you got to learn, you got to study, you got to work, you got to gain knowledge, and then that special, you can have the best brain in the world, but if you don't study, you don't feed it knowledge, the brain just sits there and doesn't do much, right? But if you have a good brain and you live the right life and you study the right things, then all of a sudden that brain now is waiting. It's waiting to fulfill its potential. So, just like the philosophers say, and here it's like, it seems to be referring to the idea, and I think Korobkin kind of says the active intellect. And here, I don't know, maybe I just don't recognize the modern Hebrew term for active intellect. But active intellect, for those of you that studied Rambam with me, know that the active intellect refers to the Aristotelian philosophers understood as the decision-making intellect within each person. And Rambam explained to us that it receives that, it's almost like what we would call a soul, right? But it's that part of us that receives the intelligence from the spheres that are above us, and eventually from God Himself, right? And with that active intellect, we can make decisions, right? We are free to decide, what to do, how to interpret what we see and feel, and so on. So that active intellect is the conduit through which prophecy goes, right? And so here, Rabbi Yehuda Levi is very similar to Rambam in this idea. He understands prophecy as being that part of our intellect. When we purify it and we educate it and we live properly, then that active intellect will receive direct knowledge from God, right? Direct, which is prophecy. Like the philosophers say, just like that soul, right? Or that active intellect, if you're one of the philosophers, whatever term you want to use, it's there. We all have it, but it's waiting for us to fulfill our potential that we have, that are natural to us, b'shleimus, completely, which they're ready and waiting to be brought up to this high level. And then the active intellect will be able to live in its fullest potential. Right? So just like that's true, the same thing, any live creature, just like we said by plants, the same thing would apply to human beings. And that's the special nature of the land of Israel. That's the special farm where if we nurture it properly and plow it properly and plant it properly and fertilize it properly and water it and prune it, etc., then the fruits will come out like they're supposed to. So this is yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to make two comments about what you just said. First of all, I was told that the reason why Yechezkel was included in the Tanakh was because he was carried by the angel to the land of Israel for most of his prophecies.
Yeah, it may be most, but certainly some of his most significant and important prophecies take place as he's transported in his vision. He's transported to Yerushalayim, and he sees what's happening in Yerushalayim. Yeah, so that's important, but that's
most, not all.
Right. Right. But so there's first of all, there's different ways of understanding that, right? Some Mepharshim understand that Yechezkel was actually transported, right? And he actually visualized in some sort of like his spirit was carried, and when he was visualizing, he was actually seeing it. And some think interpret it as a dream. You can imagine what Rambam does. He interprets it, of course, as a dream, right? But you're right. But Rabbi Yehuda Levi didn't say that. So you're right. It would have been a good thing for him to say. It would have been a good answer. He could have used it to defend his thesis, but it's not what he said.
Right. The other thing specifically about Rabbi Yehuda Levi is, I believe that one of the major differences between him and Rambam is that he believes that only Jews from birth are able to reach the level of Nevuah. So
Yes, yeah, we had that before. I forget a couple of weeks ago he mentioned that, and we discussed how controversial that is, for a
right.
long list of reasons.
Yes.
But yes, it's well known.
Ovadia Yomi, for example,
Right.
would not be a prophet according to him. And the reason I'm
Yeah.
mentioning it specifically now is, Rabbi Hertzfeld earlier this week talked about Yitro and the honor that the Quran gives him as a
Hmm.
prophet.
Right.
Rabbi Hertzfeld said that they have less prophets than us. He's actually very accurate, but it's not that much of a difference. We
Hmm.
have 48 males and 7 females. The Quran mentions 45 prophets. So
Interesting.
um,
I didn't know
uh,
the number.
yeah, so they
Um,
considered Adam, for example, a prophet. We
wow.
don't, and so, but
We don't, but the Chazal don't necessarily count Adam, but Rabbi Yehuda Levi seems to be considering Adam a prophet.
right, because
Yeah,
of this
yeah,
DNA
yeah,
spiritual seed. So
yeah,
it's fascinating. Like
yeah.
the
No,
idea
these are no very good. No, these are all really good points. But and yeah, remember we're learning Rabbi Yehuda Levi, and I try to point out when I can. I mean, almost every line there's 10 other opinions. you know, um, which is fine. That's the way it's the way life works. That's the way certainly how Judaism works. But this is Rabbi Yehuda Levi's treatise, so we're learning his opinion, and certainly the idea that only a Jew can be a prophet is he's really one of the only ones that takes that track, because it contradicts a lot of what we see in Tanakh, and the concept that a person who converts to Judaism couldn't be a prophet according to Bida Levi, that did not go over well. I don't think there's many, and almost very few, if any, other Jewish thinkers that take that tack. But yeah, that's what he said. Not everything. We're not going to like everything he says, so it's fine.
So,
But
so yeah,
yeah, go ahead,
well, I have one quick question.
please.
So to extend that to another area, were any of the prophets not Torah scholars? The reason I ask that is there are a lot of people that come through different disciplines who become intellectually savvy to humanity and the world
Uh
and
huh.
the things that go on in terms of life and understanding of the world and of God, but maybe not be Torah scholars. Were there any of our prophets that were like that weren't
So
truly
that's
Torah
an
scholars?
it's a very good question, and I'm going to give you this is my answer. Right? I'm glad you asked that question, and here's the answer, or my answer, right? And that is that there's I would really put three schools of thought on this, right? There's what, and Rambam, when he discussed philosophy, prophecy, discussed this at length. There's one school of thought that thinks of prophecy as some kind of magical thing, right? God decides, I'm going to talk to Joe Schmo today, right? And Joe Schmo wakes up and he's a prophet, right? He had a dream, whatever his dream was, and he gets prophecy, right? And that's kind of reflected in the Mamori Chazal, where the rabbis say, today prophecy is left to fools, or statements like that. If you take them literally, I mean, most people don't, but if you take that literally, then you can imagine there might be guys, some of those guys standing up in Times Square with signs up declaring doom to the world may actually be prophets, right? Most of them are high on various substances, but if you take that school of thought, then in other words, prophecy is purely a top-down concept, right? God decides to talk to you, right? And who knows? He can decide to talk to whoever he wants, right? He's God, right? So that's one school of thought. Rambam, by the way, totally rejects that school of thought. And I would explicitly rejects that school of thought, right? Rambam says that's completely inconceivable. It doesn't make any sense at all, right? It can't be finished, zero, nothing, right? Now, Rabbi Yehuda Levi hasn't, he didn't explicitly say it, but I think even what we just learned right now, he implicitly seems to agree with Rambam on that point, because he says here, he talks about how the mind, our seichel, is waiting for us to nurture it, to live the right way, to live even in the right place. And, there's a lot of conditions. We have to actuate that potential, and actuating that potential takes a lot of work. And he gave examples and so on. Right now, I'm not going into exactly what kind of work that is, because, different people might have different paths, like what that work is, right? So Rabbi Yehuda and Levi and Rambam both would agree that concept makes no sense. Your average Joe doesn't just get prophecy. You can't just go to your synagogue or church or whatever and sing really loud and shake your hands to the heavens, and all of a sudden, poof, now I received prophecy. That, according to most Jewish philosophers, is ridiculous, right? You have to do the work, right? And you have to achieve it. You have to get there. Now, the next question then would be, then you asked, part of your question was, do you have to be a Torah scholar? See, now there is where I would venture to say the Rabbi Yehuda Levi's version is absolutely, right? Not only have to be a Torah, you have to be a Jew, but you certainly have to be a Torah scholar. Rabbi Yehuda Levi mentioned the worship of God, avodas Hashem, tahara, ritual purity, the sacrifices, living in Israel. He mentioned all of these things as prerequisites to, and presumably that would include intellectual achievements in Torah and understanding. It's so on and so forth. It's not so. Without being a Torah scholar, it would be inconceivable to Rabbi Yehuda Levi, right? Now, the Rambam, on the other hand, might not agree with that. The Rambam would say, yes, it takes ethical and moral and intellectual achievement, and it takes a lot of work, but he would not have restricted it to necessarily Torah scholarship. He said it could be done. Not the Torah is the best, easiest, most effective way to do it, but not the only way, which is why the Rambam put people like Aristotle on such a high pedestal, and so on. So according to Rambam, prophecy can be achieved, but not necessarily only through Torah. Whereas according to Rabbi Yehuda Levi, it would have to be Torah. So those are three schools of thought. The school of thought that whoever God decides to talk to, he talks to. The school of thought that no, you have to work on it, but it has to be through Torah. And then the school of thought that you have to work on it, and Torah is a great way to do it, but not necessarily the only way. I see. I hope that answers the question. I think
that's very clear. But the last part of my question was, is there anybody in our history that it was not a Torah scholar that actually was a prophet? Or you might not be able to answer that, but right now, but I would like to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that in the people mentioned in Tanakh, right?
Esther, Deborah, they weren't Torah scrolls.
But then you can argue maybe they were. I don't know. I mean, I just, how do you define Torah scholar? So that would be a hard question to answer. I'm trying to think of someone mentioned as explicitly as a prophet in the Torah that explicitly was not a scholar. I mean, other than the Gentile ones like Bilam, Bilam, yes, opens another can of worms. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know.
Something to reflect on. Maybe we can talk about it another time. But yeah.
I mean, the one for some reason comes to mind is Gidon, right? Gidon was a prophet, and or at least he had visions from God, right? But Gidon was not portrayed as a particularly great scholar. He's kind of controversial a little bit here and there.
And Yiftach in the same context.
Yeah, say that. And Yiftach, yeah, that's another one. Yiftach too. Also, so whether were they really prophets or not, I mean, but they certainly had visions or have, the verse talks about them God communicating with them, and they weren't really portrayed as necessarily the greatest religious. They were great for their time for what they were needed to do what they did in their leadership roles, but so maybe they would be examples. But the Talmud certainly looks at them as if they're Torah scholars for the most part. So so it's hard to say. They're not portrayed as particularly exemplary Torah scholars in Tanakh, in the Torah itself, but yeah, okay, I don't know. That's the best I can do for now.
That's good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I see there's another hand.
Yeah, just a quick question. Isn't there a passage in the Torah involving two men where Moses says, couldn't all the Israelites be prophets? Am I confusing something?
Yeah, that's a good point. In other words, would that everyone be prophets?
Right.
But does he mean would that everyone be a Torah scholar and therefore prophecy?
Right.
Or
there was prophets, right?
One could also argue, that the revelation at Sinai was a form of prophecy itself, and everyone, and certainly not every single person that was at Sinai was a Torah scholar. So, I mean, if you look at it that way, but part of the whole point of the revelation at Sinai was that everyone, even non-prophets, saw it. So, but all right, I see. Leslie, you have your hand up. Fire away.
Just kind of on that whole thing about converts becoming prophets, getting prophecy. How far out does that stretch? Like if your mother or your father, for either case, could their child receive prophecy, or does this like brand you forever?
We have to open up the prophet rule book and see how many percent DNA. It's like for it to be a member on an Indian reservation, you need at least one grandparent, right? I guess every tribe define. So I mean, the general consensus is, and who knows what the rules are, but that at some point, you're the child and their child and their child. They're so within the Jewish people that you don't look at them as converts anymore, right? I don't. The whole concept of saying that a convert can't be a prophet is bothersome to me, to be honest. I'm not the only one to be bothered by this concept, so I don't want to go into it too much. But regardless, if you take that line, then at some point, you're no longer a convert. Otherwise, how could David have been a prophet, right? David was a son of a descendant of converts, right? So clearly, there's a point at which the stigma goes away. But I hate to say that word because we're treating it like it's a stigma, and it's not supposed to be. And there's no question that my Rambam vehemently disagreed with that idea. And so did many, if not most, maybe even all other authorities. But it's important to know this opinion exists. Whether we like it or not, it's a different story, right? But yeah, at some point it goes away. Whether that's 2 generations, 3 generations, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. But
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So let's go on to 15, chapter 15, paragraph 15. So Amar HaKuzari. So the Kuzari, the king of the Khazars, said like this, because at the end of the last paragraph, Yehuda Levi started going off on the active intellect stuff, right? He started talking about the Aristotelian stuff, right? So the Kuzari says, stop with this philosophical nonsense. I'm talking to you about Judaism. If I wanted to talk to the philosophers, I could have asked the philosopher that I talked to last chapter, right? So he says, we're not talking about all this active intellect stuff. Don't give me all that stuff. I don't want to hear about it, right? Ani asid lishol oscha al audosov lichishen asok b'mada, right? Later on, we can talk a little more. We can philosophy, metaphysics, right? We can talk about the Aristotelian metaphysics, right? But it's kind of like nowadays, if somebody starts talking theoretical physics, oh, okay, whatever. I got you. Fine. It's good. It's important, but it's not for me. I don't know that. Whatever. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Right? I want to hear more about how beautiful the land of Israel is and how wonderful it is, because the bottom line is he's saying, what I want to learn from you is not metaphysics. I can learn that from going back to the school I went to before I met you. I want to know about Israel because this interests me, right? So Omar HaChaver. So then the Chaver says as follows. So hopefully I can finish this paragraph, and then that'll probably be it for tonight. Now, this is really important. It's a frequently missed point in the Kuzari, and that is that in this book, the Kuzari, and in Rabbi Yehuda Levi's thinking, that as much as Rabbi Yehuda Levi is very particularistic, in other words, he looks at Jewish people as being inherently special and the land of Israel as being inherently special, right? Which is a controversial topic, but he's staked out his position on that. But as much as he says that, and as much as he understands Israel to have its inherent special qualities, he still understands and emphatically states, right, that Israel was made holy. Why? Right? In order that the entire world should be brought to a state of completion and, lahanchos, to give rest and peace to the whole world. The purpose and ultimate point. And here, if I start sounding slightly political, I apologize in advance, but it's tough noogies because I'm going to do it anyway. And understanding that the mission of religious Zionism, this is so incredibly important in practical, everyday terms in today's political world. The purpose and point of the Jewish people living and experiencing all these wonderful things, this closeness to God and prophecy and all this beautiful stuff that he was talking about, was why? In order that we should lead the entire world into peace, not in order that we should do otherwise. And think about that, and think about if you remember that and you take that statement and you think about it and you chazer it over again and again and again, you realize that the type of living in Israel that we need to be doing is the type that leads the world to peace. Exactly how to do that, what that means, that's a discussion for another time. But you have to remember the ultimate goal is to bring the entire world to peace. So even as particularistic as Rabbi Yehuda Levi is, he still understands our mission as a mission for the world and that brings the world to peace. Right? It was set aside, right, for the tribes of the people of Israel from the time when there became so many nations in the world and the all kinds of languages and cultures and everything all over the place. As it says, when God gave inheritances to all the different nations around the world, when he divided human beings into all kinds of groups. There's people in Indonesia, there's people in Australia, there's people in India, there's people in who knows where, right? Right? He set the boundaries of all the different nations according to the numbers, the counting of the people of Israel. The idea was that the people of Israel were meant to have that influence on all of those nations. And it's crucial for us to remember that. It's a different way of saying we're all used to the phrase from Yeshayahu of an Or Lagoyim. We have to understand that our entry into the land of Israel is not so that we should get the land of Israel. It's not so that we should have this or we should have that. It's so that the entire world should achieve peace. And that's a very, very important idea. The Avram lohitz absher lidbok badavar alokiv l'chosim arbis el b'mamad beitam besarim. Right? When did Avraham have the ability to finally attach himself to this great spiritual concept that we've been discussing and to create a covenant with God? It was during that time where he, between the animals, where the bris bein absarim, the covenant, la'achar she'egiel adam hazoshin, that happened after he reached this land. Umad datcha al kavutza shel ansei segula, right? And it's, I guess I'm I'm trying to think. It's a modern Hebrew phrase. So I guess the best translation would be like corrupting does it. How much more so, right? Then when this group of special people, Shem Ruim L'Shem Am Hashem, that are worthy of being called the nation of God, they Be'eretz Miuchedes, and they're in this special land, Shenikra Nachlas Hashem, which is called the inheritance of God. Uvizmanim Kvuim Al Yado Yisala, and at times when God decided that it's time for us to be there, Shelo Nikbu Al Pi Haskama. The times that are special, the special times of our holidays, the special times of our special years, etc., etc. These were not things that were figured out by the scientists to be the time. Remember, he was talking in a time when people assumed there were certain auspicious times for certain things to take place. That was considered a science then, right? He's saying, but our times weren't chosen by the science of figuring out the right times. Our times were chosen by God himself. They're called the Moadei, the special times of God. Im Taharos, especially with the special purity, and Avodosel, the special godly worship, Milim, Umasim, and the special words and prayers and actions, Shenikbu al Yado, that were set in place by God himself, like Melechas Hashem, which are considered the work of God, Avodas Hashem, and worship of God, etc. So, Amar Kuzari, this is 17. So the Kuzari, the Chazar, answers or states, in this way, in this way, it makes sense. It's worthy that the honor of God should become apparent and become open and influential throughout the entire world through this special relationship when the people of Israel are on their land, and hopefully bring out the kavod, the honor of God throughout the world. So I'm going to stopping here at the end of 17. And I guess we can talk a little if there's questions, comments, before we stop for the night. But next week, Linetter will start with paragraph 18. Comments, questions? No? Everybody's blown away? All right. Well, if there is,
I have one quick question. Will we
Sure.
later on discuss any discussion between the Kuzari and the Muslims and the Christians, or is this all about the rabbi and the Kuzari?
a little bit, but not much. Mostly, it's the king of the Khazars is learning about Judaism.
Okay.
So that's the main deal for the rest of the time. I mean, to be honest, Rabbi Levi doesn't care that much about what they think, and certainly he didn't write this book to tell us what they think. You know, he kind of brushed it off and done. The Christians gone, Muslims gone. Now we're talking about Jews, right?
At this point, he's already accepted Judaism, right?
Yeah, he's the king in this book here. Now the king has already converted. Right?
Oh.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, in the beginning of the Mamar Sheni, he already converted, and now he wants to learn more.
So what we find in our Siddur at the end of the Amidah, we have Sim Shalom,
right?
And at the end we say that the Lord brings peace to Israel. Val Kol Yeshvei Tevel. That's in parentheses in the conservative prayer book for all who live on earth. That's consistent with what you're saying. But Yud then in a little, in just a few minutes, we turn to the Aleinu, and at the Aleinu we have that final paragraph. Al Kain Kaveh. We hope that the Lord is going to destroy all the other idols and the Elilim,
right?
And everyone will bow down to the Lord. We're not going to force them to, but we hope the Lord will convince the other peoples.
Well, you're 100% right. I mean, the vision of the prophets, right? I mean, it's most pronounced in prophets like Isaiah, but you find it in all the prophets, right? That the ultimate vision is. I mean, I'm going to say peace on earth. I know that sounds very whatever, but the idea is not that it should be just us, right?
Yeah.
The redemption is not just for a few. The redemption is for the world, right? Whatever redemption even means. But the vision,
the word will go forth from Jerusalem.
Yes, it will go forth from right. And all the nations of the world will stream towards it, right? So So Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, of course, got this from the words of the prophets. And I think it's crucial when we talk about things like modern Zionism, right? Especially in a religious context, right? And we talk a lot about things about Zionism, about the Jewish right to the land, our history in the land, what our claims are to the land. We talk about what our our special relationship with it. We talk about what we've achieved there. We've achieved so many wonderful scientific and cultural accomplishments, and all these are well and good, and it's a place for safety from anti-Semitism and all these things that people that subscribe to Zionism talk about all the time. But we have to remind ourselves we can't stop there. We have to remember that that's not the point. That is not the point, right? The point is to bring about peace to the world, right? The reason why we're going, and if we forget that point, then we don't deserve to go back. I hate to say it, if we forget that the reason why we're doing it is for everyone, to set an example of peace to the world, and again, I'm not here to take sides in different political arguments right now, but I am here to say that when we have these political arguments, we need to remember this point. We need to remember that the reason why we're there, our entire claim rests on the fact that our living in and prospering in that our homeland is to bring peace to the world, and that's what our claim rests on. That's what all the prophecies from beginning to end, and the Jewish thinkers like Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, like we just read, understood that, and it's a very important point.
Actually, whenever people ask me about what our desires are, I actually show them the autobiography of Moshe Dayan, where 3 weeks after the 6-day war, he met with the heads of the Waqf and told them that they have the rights to the Temple Mount. He had no right to do that. The Temple Mount is, like somebody else said before, Or Lagoim, and so therefore it's for them to condemn any Jew or Christian praying on a Temple Mount is wrong according to our belief. And therefore, he had no right to give them that. Hashem gave us a gift, and he just basically rejected it in the name of the state of Israel without asking anybody. So it was before I was born, so I couldn't say what I wanted.
You couldn't say what you wanted. It's an important time in history and something we should think about a lot. I'm like I said, I'm not here to take sides in debates, but whatever decisions we do make, we need to remember and understand that is the point. Hopefully it will be an example for other nations around the world to seek justice, and to right wrongs and to treat people properly. And that's what it's supposed to be, and to bring people to knowledge of God, which is the knowledge of truth, the knowledge of justice, to that, righteousness, etc. The things that the prophets talk about. That's why we're going back there, and if we forget it, then unfortunately the world's going to remind us that it's not so simple. But anyway, I appreciate everyone's participation, and Amir Hashem will be here next week. And we'll continue. We'll continue from 18. All right.
Yeah.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Saul.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.